Captain Hale stood in the middle of the ruined valley, surrounded by shattered metal and burnt earth. Smoke curled upward in thin gray ribbons, as if the ground was breathing its last tired breaths. Only a few hours ago, this place had been the main human defense line. Soldiers had shouted orders, engines had roared, and the sky had burned with the light of desperate weapons. Now everything lay quiet, too quiet for a battlefield that had once held thousands. His armor was cracked from shoulder to knee. His visor flickered with weak signals, showing nothing but broken static. His legs trembled beneath him, yet he forced himself to remain standing. It felt wrong to fall while others had fought to their final breath beside him. Humanity's resistance had collapsed, but he refused to lie down in defeat. This was all he could give now, his stubborn refusal to bow. The wind carried the bitter smell of metal, fire, and the faintest hint of something unearthly. Knew what it meant. The forces were close. Their footsteps did not echo like humans, nor did their ships make the familiar scream of engines. Instead, their presence felt like a pressure in the air, a slow tightening on the lungs, as if the planet itself feared them. A tremor rolled through the valley floor. His hand shot to his useless rifle out of instinct. The weapon had no power left, he knew that. Still, the weight of it gave him courage. He steadied his breath and watched the smoke ahead begin to part, torn aside by an unseen force. She appeared like a rising star wrapped in darkness. The alien queen stepped forward, her tall figure glowing with a cold, silver light. Her skin shimmered like living metal, smooth and cruel in its beauty. A crown of shifting energy hovered above her head, moving like burning water. Her eyes, two brilliant orbs of deep gold, watched the way a powerful creature watched the last spark of a dying fire. Behind her, massive wing-like blades stretched outward, each piece sliding and unfolding gracefully. They produced no sound, yet the air quivered around them. She did not walk, she glided, as if gravity respected her more than anyone else on this broken battlefield. His heart pounded painfully. He had seen her from a distance before, during the earliest days of the invasion. Every soldier had. The queen was not just a leader. She was the spearhead of an empire that swallowed solar systems as easily as humans inhaled air. Entire civilizations had knelt before her or vanished from the stars. And now she stood directly in front of him, one broken human, all that remained of Earth's last stand. She stopped only a few meters away. The world seemed to shrink until there was nothing but her and the faint echo of his heartbeat. When she spoke, her voice was deep and calm, echoing like an ancient bell. "Human," she said, "your struggle ends here." The words were not shouted. They did not need to be. Each syllable carried power, weight, and a certainty that made his breath catch. He locked his legs, refusing to fall. "If it ends with me standing." Her gaze narrowed slightly, not angry, almost curious. "You stand alone. Your armies are gone. Your leaders are gone. Your world trembles in fear, yet you do not kneel." Swallowed, someone has to stay standing. The queen lifted her hand. Energy shimmered around her fingers like threads of molten glass. With that hand, she could destroy him in an instant. Knew it. She knew it. But she did not strike. Instead, her glowing eyes studied him as though she were reading the last page of a long, complicated story. Then she spoke again, and her words hit him harder than any weapon. "I offer you a final choice. You or your planet, decide." Froze, his breath turned sharp. His heart felt like it cracked inside his chest. The queen's voice remained steady, cold like the edge of a blade. "One of you must fall." And in that terrible moment, Hale realized he was no longer fighting a war. He was standing at the edge of the final decision, one that would decide the fate of Earth itself. His legs shook as he remained frozen, staring at the alien queen. Her presence was overwhelming, yet there was a strange stillness in her posture, as if she expected him to speak, to decide, to betray his own instincts. The battlefield around him whispered faintly, the moan of broken metal, the hiss of cooling fire, the soft crack of trees splitting under the weight of destruction. Everything was quiet except for his own heartbeat, loud in his ears. His mind, however, was not in the valley anymore. It traveled across time to the people he loved, the ones who had believed in him when the world itself seemed to turn against them. He saw his younger sister, her hair tangled, eyes wide with fear but shining with hope, hiding with a group of children and refugees underground as the alien forces crushed every city above. Her small hand had waved at a cracked monitor, saying softly, "Come back safe." He could almost hear her voice now, trembling with worry yet trying to sound brave. Felt a tight knot in his chest. He had promised her he would. And here he was, standing alone, powerless, facing a being who could destroy everything he had ever cared for with a single thought. If he made the wrong choice now, if he hesitated for even a second, the world it hidden in would be gone. Every person he had ever known, every home, every city would vanish in the cold fire of the Queen's army. He shook his head slightly, trying to focus. The alien queen was still there, watching him silently. She did not speak, yet the weight of her gaze pressed into him like the crush of gravity. She did not need words to make him understand the magnitude of his decision. The choice was his, and yet he wondered, why had she given him this chance? Why allow one human to decide the fate of an entire planet? "Why me?" he whispered, the sound lost among the ruins. The queen's eyes narrowed, golden light flickering. "Because you dared to defy me alone. You are the one who did not flee when all others fell. You stood while your kind crumbled. You are interesting." Her words held no anger, no malice, just a kind of distant curiosity that made feel both small and enormous at the same time. He clenched his fists, the metal of his broken armor biting into his palms. "It's what we do," he said quietly, almost to himself. Humanity did not surrender easily. Even when their cities burned, their weapons failed, and hope seemed to vanish, they resisted. That stubbornness, that unwillingness to give in was the only thing that had carried them this far. The queen stepped closer, her silver light brightening the ash around him. The ground seemed to quiver beneath her. "If you surrender yourself," she said, her voice calm and terrible, "I will spare your planet. Your people will live. They will continue to breathe, fight, and flourish." Stomach tightened. The thought of giving himself up, his life, his freedom, felt both terrifying and right. He had never believed in dying for nothing. But what if he surrendered and it still wasn't enough? What if the Queen's promise was a lie, or if her mercy had limits he could not understand? "And if I choose my planet?" he asked, voice tight. Her expression sharpened, almost disappointed. "Then they die, every last one of them. Your choice is absolute." Looked at the shattered valley around him, at the ash drifting across the blackened earth, at the smoke rising toward the pale sky. Humanity had fought to the very end. He had watched friends fall, leaders vanish, and armies crumble. And now, alone, he carried the weight of an entire world in his heart. The Queen lifted her hand slightly, the air around it shimmering with invisible energy. "Decide, human," she said softly, almost as if urging him to speak, almost as if she wanted him to surprise her. "I will not wait forever." Took a trembling breath, feeling the wind of her presence pressing against him like a storm. Somewhere deep inside, beneath fear, beneath exhaustion, beneath the crushing weight of responsibility, he felt the spark that had always driven humanity forward. The stubborn, unbreakable will to protect, to fight, to survive, no matter the cost. And he knew in that moment that whatever choice he made, it would come from that spark, the spark that refused to die even when everything else had. Felt the weight of the Queen's words pressing down on him, heavier than any weapon, heavier than any battlefield he had ever faced. The choice was clear in its cruelty: surrender himself and save millions, or refuse and let the world burn. The thought twisted in his stomach, sharp and relentless. He was not a king, not a leader of nations, just one human standing on scorched earth. But here, in this moment, he held the fate of billions. The alien queen's gaze never wavered. She watched him carefully, almost kindly, though her power radiated in waves that made the air shimmer. "If you surrender," she repeated, "your life will be mine. I will study you. Your mind, your memories, your strengths. You will become a living archive of humanity. You will exist, but not as yourself." Swallowed hard, the image rose in his mind of living as a vessel for an alien mind, stripped of freedom, stripped of choice, stripped of the laughter, love, and sorrow that made him human. He had fought to survive, but survival like that, empty and controlled, was worse than death. "A prisoner," he muttered, almost to himself. "Not a prisoner," the Queen corrected, her voice smooth and low. "A symbol, a record of the species that dared defy me." He looked at her, trying to find a crack in her calm, a trace of mercy beyond the bargain. "You threaten an entire world to capture one soldier." She tilted her head, her golden eyes reflecting the ruins around them. I did not choose you for your strength alone, Hale. I remember every opponent who surprises me, who breaks expectation. You wounded me. You survived where others fell. You are remarkable. Froze wounded her? That was impossible, or so he thought. Yet in the faint shimmer of her arm he could see a scar glowing softly, evidence of their earlier fight. Somehow he had survived the impossible and left a mark on the most powerful being in the galaxy. His chest tightened. You remembered. Her gaze softened almost imperceptibly. I remember those who challenge fate. I study them. I learn from them. And now I give you the chance to do one more thing, to decide the outcome of your world. His mind spun. His family, his friends, the people who had trusted him, they were gone in reality, scattered or hiding. And yet here he was, faced with the ultimate responsibility. Every instinct screamed to survive, to surrender, to let himself live, but every memory of humanity screaming for hope pulled in the other direction. What if I refuse? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. What happens then? Her eyes glowed brighter. Then your planet dies. Every city, every living being, every memory of your species will end with your choice. Do you understand? He swallowed, feeling the hot bite of fear and the icy edge of resolve. The entire weight of existence pressed against him. One decision, his decision, would shape history, erase it, or preserve it. Yet in that moment, something deep inside stirred, the stubborn spark of humanity. They had survived floods, famines, wars, and every impossible threat the universe could throw at them. And now, as one soldier standing alone, he felt the same stubborn will rise within him. Not for glory, not for himself, but for others. I understand, he said slowly, his voice steadying, but there is something you don't see. The Queen raised a thin brow. And what is that, human? His hands clenched into fists, trembling but determined. Humans do not give up. We do not surrender to fear. Even when the world is broken, even when everything seems lost, we find a way. That is who we are. For a long moment, she remained silent. Her wings flickered softly, the glow in her eyes unreadable. The energy around her hand dimmed slightly, as if the universe itself paused to listen to one human defiance. You believe one species can stand against me? She asked finally, her voice tinged with a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. Nodded, feeling his pulse hammering. I don't just believe it, I am it, and I will fight even if I stand alone. The Queen studied him, silent now. For the first time, sensed something almost human in her expression, respect, or perhaps intrigue. Either way, she was waiting, watching, challenging him. And knew deep down that the next choice he made, his sacrifice or defiance, would not only define the future of Earth, but also define the strength of humanity in the eyes of the universe. Breath came in short, heavy bursts as he faced the Queen. The battlefield stretched behind him, and lifeless, yet somehow still holding the weight of memory. The echoes of humanity's fight, the fallen comrades, the desperate hopes that had burned brighter than the fires of war. The Queen's golden eyes locked onto his, unblinking, piercing as if she could see the very essence of his soul. He remembered his sister, hiding underground with a handful of children, her small hands clutching food and blankets, her eyes wide with fear yet defiant. He could see her waiting for him, believing that he would survive, that he would come back to them. And he realized with a sharp pang that this was not just about him. It was never about him. Every choice he made now would echo through the lives of millions, through the future of a species that had never surrendered. Choose, the Queen repeated, her voice soft yet heavy, your life or your planet. Swallowed, his fingers dug into the cold metal of his broken armor. His body screamed for rest, for surrender, for escape from this impossible decision. But the fire in his chest, the stubborn, relentless fire that had carried humanity through centuries of struggle, refused to die. He opened his mouth, but before words could leave, a small figure emerged from the smoke. A child, no older than 10, stepped out from beneath a fallen ship, eyes wide with terror. Dust and ash coated her hair, her clothes torn, but she moved with surprising courage. She clutched the corner of a torn tarp for balance and looked directly at, her tiny voice trembling. His heart clenched. This child, this fragile symbol of everything he had been fighting for, had survived. And now she was here, unprotected, exposed, entirely dependent on the one soldier still standing. The Queen's eyes flicked to the girl, a flash of surprise crossing her features. "A survivor?" she asked, her voice carrying no warmth, only curiosity. Moved instinctively, stepping in front of the child, shielding her with his body. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. "Do not come any closer." She hesitated but did not move. Her eyes were fixed on him, silently pleading. "You can leave," he whispered. "Run and find shelter. Go now." The Queen's wings glimmered behind her, folding and unfolding slowly like a storm preparing to strike. "I offered a choice," she said, her tone cold, "and you placed the lives of others above yourself. Fascinating." Felt his jaw tighten. He had no choice but to protect her. That was the human instinct, to save others, even at one's own expense. He could die, he could surrender, but the people who relied on him would live only if he made the right decision. The child stayed, clutching his armor with tiny hands, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and trust. Looked down at her and felt a wave of determination rise inside him. This was the moment. This was the choice. Not for glory, not for recognition, but for the life of the child, for the survival of humanity, for the unbroken spirit of a species that refused to be crushed. He straightened his shoulders, raised his head, and met the Queen's gaze with unwavering resolve. His voice rang out across the ruined valley, steady and strong. "I choose," he began, and for the first time he felt certainty amidst the chaos. "I choose to protect them, always, even if it costs me everything." The Queen watched silently, golden eyes sharp and calculating. For a heartbeat, the world seemed suspended between silence and fire. Then her wings spread slowly, a faint hum of power vibrating through the air, and she tilted her head in acknowledgement. "You choose others over yourself," she said finally, her voice calm but tinged with something almost like respect. "A rare and curious trait, one that will be remembered." Exhaled sharply, his body trembling but resolute. Around him the battlefield waited silent as if holding its breath. He could not see the outcome yet. He could not know if this choice would be enough. But for the first time in hours, days, he felt something that had long been absent, hope. He had made his choice, and he would stand by it no matter the cost. The Queen studied him for a long moment, then spoke softly, her wings folding inward. "Very well, human. We shall see if your defiance carries the weight of a world." His heart thundered in his chest. The moment of decision had come, and he was ready, not as a soldier, not as a fighter, but as a human. And that, he knew, was enough. The battlefield lay still, but tension crackled in the air like electricity. Stood before the alien Queen, heart pounding, body trembling, yet his gaze did not falter. The little girl clung to his side, her small hands clutching his armor. She was a reminder of everything he fought for, everything humanity represented. Every city, every life, every hope depended on what he did next. The Queen's golden eyes studied him silently. She radiated power, a presence that could crush mountains and shatter planets. Yet now she did something unexpected. She waited. She did not attack, did not command her soldiers to strike. She simply observed. "Human," she said finally, voice smooth like flowing metal. "You have made your choice. You offer yourself freely. Are you certain?" Swallowed, a lump rising in his throat. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, yet beneath the fear, determination surged. "Yes," he said steadily. "I choose myself. Take me, leave my planet." The child looked up at him, confusion and fear mingled in her eyes. "But what about you?" she asked quietly. Crouched slightly, brushing ash from her hair. "I'll be fine," he said, though he did not know if that was true. "But the rest will live." The Queen's expression softened, though not with kindness. She seemed almost curious, as if she had encountered something rare and valuable. "You understand what awaits you?" she asked, wings folding slowly behind her. "Yes," replied. He did not flinch, though the thought of surrendering his body, his mind, his very self to an alien power should have terrified him. He had faced death before, yet this was different. This was the choice of a human willing to give everything for others. The Queen's hand hovered above his head, energy shimmering in the air like molten light. Around them her soldiers waited, immense and silent, the ultimate threat poised but restrained. could feel the power humming through the ground beneath his boots, vibrating into his bones. "Then kneel," the queen commanded. Hesitated only for a heartbeat, then lowered himself to the scorched earth. The metal of his armor bit into his skin, and the ash smelled sharp in his lungs, yet he felt a strange pride. Not pride in surviving, but in what he had chosen. He was not surrendering out of fear. He was giving himself willingly so that millions could live. The child stepped closer, hands trembling as she reached for him, placed his own hand over hers, holding it firmly. "Stay here," he whispered. "You are the future, remember that." The queen's wings unfurled slightly, casting shadows over the ruined valley. "Your species refuses to die quietly," she murmured. "Perhaps I misjudged your kind." Allowed himself a small, defiant smile, despite the fear curling in his chest. "We don't die quietly, we fight, we survive, even when it seems impossible." A hum of energy grew around the queen's hand, then suddenly paused. One of her lieutenants, a massive creature of bone and metal, rushed forward, interrupting the moment. "Your Majesty," it said, voice like grinding steel, "scanners detect rising energy from the human bunkers. Remaining forces are regrouping. They prepare a counterstrike." The queen's eyes narrowed. Impossible, they should have fallen. Straightened, feeling a surge of hope. "Humans don't stay down," he said quietly. The queen regarded him with something that resembled respect, or at least interest. Her wings shifted, glowing faintly as if considering the unexpected. "You risk your life for your planet, and yet your kind still defies me," she said. "I will honor your choice for now." Exhaled slowly, the first breath of relief he had taken in days. His legs ached. His body screamed in exhaustion. Yet inside, a fire burned. Humanity's hope, fragile and battered, still lived because one human had chosen courage over fear, selflessness over survival. He glanced down at the child who had hidden her face in his armor. He whispered softly, "We'll survive together." The queen's gaze lingered on him for a long moment, her eyes reflecting both curiosity and wariness. Then finally she stepped back, her army forming a silent barrier around the battlefield. For now Earth would live, and Hale, alone and exhausted, had changed the course of history with a single brave choice. The valley was silent, but the air thrummed with tension. Stood still, the child's small hand gripping his armor as the alien queen's army held its position. Her wings glimmered faintly, casting long, eerie shadows across the ruined battlefield. Every instinct in his body screamed to flee, yet he did not move. He had made his choice, and now the weight of it pressed down harder than any weapon ever could. He glanced at the child. Her wide eyes reflected fear, awe, and trust all at once. She was a living symbol of everything he had fought for, everything humanity had refused to surrender. And she reminded him that this battle was far from over. The queen's voice broke the tense silence. "You surrender yourself willingly, human," she said. "Yet your people still rise. They refuse to bow even when all seems lost." "Swallowed, humans don't stay down," he replied, voice steady despite exhaustion. "We fight for each other even when it seems impossible. That is who we are." Her golden eyes studied him, analyzing, calculating, as if trying to see the invisible threads of humanity's stubborn will. "Your defiance is remarkable," she said slowly. "It almost makes me question my calculations." Took a deep breath. "It doesn't matter what you think, it matters what we do, and we survive." The queen tilted her head, the hum of her power vibrating through the valley. Around them, her soldiers shifted slightly but did not attack. Then, from the distance, a vibration rolled across the ground, faint at first, then stronger. His pulse quickened. Hidden underground bunkers, scattered across the surrounding hills, were activating. The remaining human forces were rising, mechs creaking, soldiers emerging from debris, engines humming to life. They were battered, exhausted, and outnumbered, yet they moved with purpose, driven by determination, not fear. The queen's eyes flicked toward the distant hills, narrowing. "Impossible," she muttered. "They should be broken, scattered, defeated." His jaw tightened. "They are human," he said quietly. "We don't stay broken." The child tugged at his sleeve, and he bent slightly to look at her. "See," he said softly, "even when it feels hopeless, we find a way." The queen's wings flickered as she observed, the light around her shifting. You risked everything for your world, she said, voice softer now, almost reflective. And yet your kind still challenges me. Straightened, feeling a surge of defiance. Not challenges you, he said firmly. Challenges fear, challenges the idea that we're powerless. Every human here is proof that courage is stronger than despair. A low murmur rolled through the battlefield as the Queen's lieutenants conferred. She raised a hand, and her soldiers froze, energy held in check. Enough, she commanded. We will see if this species is truly as resilient as one human claims. His heart pounded. The moment had come. Humanity's last forces were rising, converging in the distance, and the Queen was watching, not attacking, not yet. Every step the soldiers took was an act of hope, of defiance, and it reminded of why he had chosen to protect them instead of himself. The child stepped closer, letting go of his armor to wave at the distant humans. They came back, she whispered. Yes, replied, voice low but steady. And they never stopped believing we could win. That's what makes us human. That's why we survive. The Queen's gaze lingered on him, thoughtful now, her golden eyes glowing with an intensity that made the air hum. For the first time, she seemed to hesitate, not from fear, but from curiosity. She had underestimated this species, this stubborn, defiant, impossible species. Exhaled slowly, feeling exhaustion and relief wash over him in waves. He could not see the final outcome yet, but he knew one thing. Even alone, even outnumbered, humanity's courage had drawn a line that the Queen could not ignore. And in that moment, Hale understood the true cost of defiance, not in blood, not in death, but in the unwavering refusal to let hope die even when everything else had fallen. The ground trembled beneath his boots as distant engines roared to life. From the hidden bunkers, battered mechs, tanks, and soldiers emerged, their silhouettes cutting through the smoke and ash. Humanity, thought broken and scattered, was rising again. And this time they were not running. They were advancing. His heart pounded, but he did not move. He remained between the child and the approaching army, standing tall, resolute. The Queen hovered silently before him, wings shimmering with restrained energy. Her golden eyes glowed, reflecting both surprise and curiosity. She had not expected humanity to gather strength after such devastation, yet here they were, moving forward with a determination that was almost defiant. The child clutched his hand, eyes wide. They came back, she whispered. Yes, said softly, his voice filled with quiet pride. We always come back. The Queen studied the advancing humans. Her immense army waited, poised to strike, yet she did not give the command. It was as if she recognized something in the soldiers' eyes, something she had underestimated, the unbroken human spirit. You reason, she said too, her voice calm yet carrying the weight of centuries of conquest. One human alone against my forces, and still your species survives. You risked your life willingly, yet your people rise again. How? Met her gaze without flinching. Because we fight for each other, he said firmly. Because we never give up no matter how hopeless it seems. You might have power, but we have courage, and courage is contagious. The Queen tilted her head, golden eyes narrowing thoughtfully. She studied him as if weighing the value of his words against the evidence before her. And then she spoke again, slower this time. Perhaps I misjudged your species. Perhaps your defiance is worth observing. His breath caught. For months, humans had feared the forces, yet here he stood, alone, unbowed, and suddenly the impossible seemed possible. The child tugged at his sleeve. Are they going to fight? She asked, trembling. Shook his head. Not today, he whispered, not while we still have hope. In a gesture that startled him, the Queen's hand rose, spreading her massive wings wider, casting a radiant light across the valley. Your planet will live, she declared. For now. Because one human chose others over himself, because one human reminded me of what courage can do. Her army stepped back, energy dampening. Her lieutenants bowed, silent and obedient. The air seemed lighter, yet still heavy with the memory of the war that had raged here. Exhaled slowly, relief washing over him, but he did not let himself relax completely. Humanity had survived, but the path ahead remained uncertain. The child looked up at him, eyes filled with awe and gratitude. You saved us, she whispered. Crouched slightly, brushing ash from her hair. We saved each other, he said softly. That's what humans do. We protect, we fight, and we rise again. Behind them, the surviving human forces advanced steadily, their worn armor gleaming in the pale light. Soldiers who had thought all was lost now had a symbol, a leader, not one who commanded armies by rank, but one who led by courage and choice. And the queen, the most powerful being had ever faced, watched silently, acknowledging the strength of a species she had underestimated. As the sun began to pierce through the smoke, looked around the valley. Ruin stretched as far as he could see, yet amidst the ash, life endured. Humanity had lost much, but it had not lost its spirit. The queen finally stepped back, her wings folding in a deliberate, graceful motion. "Remember this, human," she said softly. "Your species refuses to surrender. That is why you endure. That is why you persist. That is why you will spread among the stars." Straightened, exhausted, but resolute, he raised a hand toward the sky, toward the human forces moving forward. "We are more than you think," he said. "We always have been." The child smiled, hope shining in her eyes. "We won," she said, voice trembling. Shook his head with a small grin. "Not yet," he said. "We survive, that's the first step. The rest is ours to fight for." The alien queen's form began to shimmer, then disappeared into the sky, leaving silence in her wake. And in that silence, humanity breathed again. They had faced annihilation, despair, and overwhelming odds, and they had survived. Not because of weapons, not because of strategy, but because one human had chosen courage, selflessness, and hope over fear. And that choice changed everything. HFY, humanity stood tall, unbroken, and alive.